A hand plane sold at a farm auction outside Dubuque last spring for $11. It went in a box lot with 3 rusted saws and a coffee can of bolts. The man who bought the box sold that one plane on its own for $2,400. It was a Stanley No. 1. It is the smallest bench plane Stanley ever made, and it is the single most valuable common tool sitting in American garages right now. So today I want to show you 10 old tools that are worth real money, and more importantly, how to tell them apart from the ones that are not. Because most old tools are worth about $20, and the difference between the $20 tool and the $2,000 tool is usually one small marking that takes about 4 seconds to check. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. I read all of them. Let me be honest about the odds first, because I would rather you hear it from me than find out later. Most of what is in a garage is worth what you think it is worth, which is not much. A common bench plane in ordinary shape is $20 to $55. A common saw is $20 to $40. That is the reality for the large majority of it. But a handful of specific tools break out of that range completely, and those are the 10 we are going through. Before we start, 3 things decide almost every price in this hobby. The first is condition, and it matters more here than people expect. The gap between a user-grade tool and an excellent one is typically 3 to 5 times the price. Same tool, same maker, same model. So a rusty example of a good tool and a clean example of the same tool are not really the same object as far as the market is concerned. The second is the original box. If a tool still has its box, that is worth roughly 50 to 100% on top of the tool itself. People threw the boxes away because a box is not a tool. The box was half the money. The third is the maker's mark, and this is the one that actually separates the 10 in this video from everything else in the garage. Almost all of these are identified by a logo, a stamp, or a medallion, and almost none of them are identified by what the tool looks like. 2 quick dating rules that will cover most of what you find. On Stanley tools, the Sweetheart era logo, which ran from about 1920 to 1935, carries a real premium over anything made after 1960. It is a small heart shape worked into the logo, and once you know it is there, you will spot it immediately. And on Disston saws, the medallion on the handle is the date stamp. Anything before 1875 carries a premium. One last thing before we count, because it trips people up constantly. The Stanley No. 4 bench plane is the most common plane in existence. There are millions of them. It is a good tool. It is genuinely useful, and it is worth $20 to $55, no matter how nice yours is. Recognizing a tool is not the same as it being rare. Usually it is the opposite. Number 10, the common bench planes. Stanley No. 4, No. 5, No. 6. These are the ones you actually have. The 4 is the smoothing plane, the 5 is the jack plane, and between them they were sold by the tens of millions. A 4 runs $20 to $55. A 5 is $25 to $60. A 6 is $30 to $70. I am starting here on purpose because you need to know what ordinary looks like before the rest of this list means anything. If you pull a plane out of a drawer and it says 4 or 5 on the tote, you have a useful tool and not a payday. What to check? Look at the number cast into the body. Then look for the Sweetheart logo on the blade. A Sweetheart Era 5 is worth noticeably more than a 1970s one, but it is still not a rare tool. Number 9, Winchester branded wrenches. Winchester made tools. Not many people know that, and it is the whole reason these are worth anything. The firearms name carries a collector premium that the wrench itself would never earn. A Winchester wrench runs around $100, which is roughly 10 times what an identical unbranded wrench brings. What to check? The name stamped into the shank. That is it. It is not subtle once you look, but nobody looks because a wrench is a wrench. The same principle applies to a few other crossover brands. Kutter is the other big one, and we will come back to it. Number 8, the Miller's Falls No. 2 egg beater drill. This is the hand crank drill with the gear wheel on the side, the kind that looks like a kitchen mixer made of iron. Most people find one and assume it is a novelty because a cordless drill does the job in a second. A Miller's Falls number 2 runs $150 to $200 and up. What to check? The maker's name on the frame, and then the gear. Spin it. The gear should turn smoothly and the chuck should grip. A seized one is worth a fraction. Goodell-Pratt made a very similar drill of similar quality, and those run around $100. So if the name is not Miller's Falls, it is still worth reading. Number 7, North Brothers Yankee push drills. The push drill is the one you press down on and the shaft spins itself. They are still genuinely useful, which is part of why they hold value. On their own, they are modest. In the original roll, with the bits, they run $80 to $200. That is the same pattern as the box rule I mentioned earlier. The tool is worth something. The tool with its original kit is worth several times more. What to check? The North Brothers name, and then whether the bits are still with it. The bits live in the handle on most models, so unscrew the cap and look before you decide you have a bare tool. Number 6, Keen Kutter axes. Keen Kutter was a hardware brand that put its name on a very wide range of tools, and the axes in particular have a following. A Keen Kutter axe runs around $300. What to check? The name etched or stamped into the head, usually on the cheek. Etching wears off, so wipe the head and look at it in good light before you decide it is unmarked. That is worth doing on every axe head you find, because an unmarked axe is a $20 tool and a marked one is $300. Number 5, pre-1900 Disston hand saws. Disston was the dominant American saw maker, and their saws are everywhere, which is why most of them are cheap. A standard Disston with a plastic handle is $20 to $40. But a pre-1900 example, with the etch still readable on the blade and the original rosewood or applewood handle, runs $60 to $200. And the rare medallion variants go for $300 to $500 at specialist auctions. What to check? 3 things. The medallion, which is the round brass disc in the handle, because its design dates the saw. The handle material, because wood is early and plastic is late, and the etch on the blade, which is the maker's mark, acid etched into the steel. That etch is the first thing to disappear under rust, so if you can still read it, you have something better than average. Do not sand the blade to make it look nicer. The etch is the value, and sanding takes it off. Number 4, Stanley Bedrock planes. Stanley made 2 lines of bench plane. The Bailey line, which is the common one, and the Bedrock line, which was the premium version with a different frog design. They look similar at a glance, and they are not similarly priced. A Bedrock runs roughly 2 to 3 times the equivalent Bailey. A 605, which is the Bedrock equivalent of the common number 5, sits around $250, against maybe $60 for the Bailey. What to check? The number. Bedrocks use 600 series numbers, so 604, 605, 606. If the number on the plane starts with a 6 and has 3 digits, stop and look properly. And the top of the sides on a Bedrock is flat rather than rounded, which is the quickest visual tell across a table. Number 3, the Stanley number 55 combination plane. This is the one that looks like a piece of machinery rather than a hand tool. It came with a large set of cutters in a wooden case, and it was marketed as 55 planes in one. A complete number 55 with its cutters runs $600 to $1,500. The Liberty Bell number 45 with its original box and cutters runs $500 to $900. What to check? Completeness, more than anything else on this list. The value is in the cutter set. A number 55 body with no cutters is a fraction of a complete one, and the cutters usually live in a separate wooden box that gets separated from the plane and sold on its own for a few dollars. If you find one, look for the box before you look at anything else. Number 2, Norris infill planes. These are British, and they are the ones serious collectors chase. An infill plane has a metal shell filled with dense hardwood, usually rosewood, and the good ones were essentially handmade. A Norris A1 adjustable smoothing plane runs around $1,000 and up. A Norris number 5 is around $250. Spears of Air made comparable planes that run around $200 and up. What to check? The name, stamped into the lever cap or the body. Then the wood infill, which should be tight against the metal with no gaps or movement. And on the A1 specifically, the adjuster mechanism, which should still work. A cracked infill or a seized adjuster takes most of the value out. Number 1, the Stanley number 1. The number 1 is the smallest bench plane Stanley made. It is about 5.5 inches long, and it looks like a toy next to a normal plane, which is exactly why it gets treated like one. It was made for a very long time, but it never sold well because it is too small to be much use for actual planing. Low sales then means low survival now. A Stanley number 1 runs $800 to $2,500, and clean examples sell in the $2,500 to $4,000 range. What to check? The number 1 cast into the bed behind the knob. Then the completeness, because the small parts on these went missing constantly, and a replacement lever cap is obvious to any collector. And the condition, because this is the one tool on the list where the 3 to 5 times condition gap really bites. A rough number 1 is still worth several $100. A clean one is worth several thousand. Now condition and cleaning, because this decides more of your money than any of the identification does. Rust on the surface is not the problem people think it is. Light surface rust cleans off, and collectors expect it on a 100-year-old tool. Pitting is the problem, because pitting is metal that is gone and it does not come back. Cracks in a plane body or a handle are serious. Missing parts are serious. And here's the one that costs people the most. Do not sand, grind, or wire wheel a tool before you know what it is. I have watched people take a wire wheel to a plane and remove the japanning, which is the black finish, and the maker's mark along with it. That is the difference between a $200 tool and a $40 tool, done in about a minute. Clean gently, or better, do not clean at all until it is identified. Read first, clean second. The reason I'm making these is straightforward. Nobody teaches this. There is no class for it. So a family clears a garage, the whole lot goes in a scrap bin or a $5 box at a yard sale, and the person who turns up early with a phone knows exactly which 2 things to pull out of that box. That is not a scam. It is just an information gap, and it is easy to close. So the short version, most old tools are worth $20 to $50. The exceptions are identified by a marking, not by appearance. Check the number on planes, the medallion on saws, the name on wrenches and axes, and whether the box or the cutters are still with it. And do not clean anything until you have read it. Go out to the garage tonight and turn things over. Wipe the head. Read the stamp. Look at the number. It takes an evening, and you only have to do it once. If this was useful, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what you found out there. I read all of them.